Hi everybody, today I'll show you how to create a custom CRM application using a low-code, no-code platform, DaDaBIK. I'm not using a template, I'm not customizing an existing pre-packaged CRM app, I'm doing everything from scratch. And I will do it in less than 2 hours without coding, no coding required. So first I show you the resulting application, what you will get after 2 hours of work, and then I will show you how I actually created this application. My name is Eugenio Tacchini and I am the founder of DaDaBIK. I hope you will enjoy the video, let's start. Here is the application we are going to build. A classic CRM, Customer Relationship Management, web application that you can use to register leads and prospects, convert them into customers, register the communications you have with them, and the sales. A dashboard where the managers can see how the business is going. It's an app you can host wherever you want, in the cloud, in your company's server, your local machine. You're not forced to store it in our cloud. So you'll have, the classic CRUD forms to create, read, update, delete data. Forms are responsive, and you can also inline edit on the grid. You can import and synchronize data from Excel and CSV files. You can customize the layout. For example, you can change the logo, change the color theme, add your own CSS, and more. You have a built-in export to PDF feature, and you can write your own PDF template if the default one doesn't fit your need. 22 languages available. You'll get a secure, multi-user, enterprise-ready application. You can have multiple users and multiple user groups and assign very granular permissions to each group. In this app, we will have 3 user groups: admin, salespeople, sales managers. Admins are the developers of the application, so they can modify the application itself and do everything they want. Then we have salespeople. They are in touch with customers and potential customers, so-called lead and prospects. And finally, we have sales managers. Salespeople can add new leads, convert them into prospects, and then into customers. They can close deals with those customers and register the sales into the system. But we will set permissions so that each salesperson can only see the customers and the sales registered by them, while sales managers instead can see everything. This application will be ready to be integrated with other software. In fact, you have HTTP API that other applications can use to communicate with this one. But you can also export your data in CSV. You can use LDAP to authenticate if you want, or even share the authentication with WordPress. Revisions, audit features. For each record, I can see who modified the record and when. And finally, you can embed your app or part of it in a WordPress page. So after these 2 hours, you'll have a working, enterprise-ready, no-code application. Then, in the near future, I will publish a second and last part of the video. I will refine and improve the CRM app, this time using a very limited amount of code. Something that even if you have never coded in your life, you will understand. Low-code development. This will allow us to add something more to our application. Let me mention some of the things we will add. Custom buttons that execute specific actions, for example, convert a prospect into a customer. We can do it using a button instead of changing the form field. Conditional fields. Complex validation rules for your data. Calculated fields. And I will also show the development of a CRM funnel using an external library that I will integrate in DaDaBIK, again with a little amount of code. Okay, that was what you will get. Now we need to start the work because it will be a long journey. But before starting, let me introduce the platform we are using. I guess most of the viewers of this channel are DaDaBIK users already, but if you're not, DaDaBIK is a low-code, no-code platform. It's available since 2001, more than 20 years. It is constantly updated and has thousands of users from all over the world. Customers include individuals, small businesses, big companies, and many universities as well. DaDaBIK comes in 3 editions: Pro, Enterprise, and Platinum. I will use the Platinum edition in this video, but almost all the features we will use are available in DaDaBIK Enterprise as well, and many of them also in DaDaBIK Pro. It's important to point out that DaDaBIK is a general-purpose platform. So a CRM application is just one example of application you can create with DaDaBIK. You can build a library management application, an ERP, a warehouse management app, a simple contact form, anything that is based on data and has forms, reports, and charts is a good candidate for DaDaBIK. It is usually used to build internal tools by both coders and non-coders, but it is not limited to internal tools. You can get DaDaBIK from dadabik.com/download. Okay, let's start. First thing, DaDaBIK needs a database to work, a place to store the data. It can be MySQL, PostgreSQL, Microsoft SQL Server, or SQLite. So the first thing I will do is the creation of an empty database we will use with DaDaBIK. So you can start your stopwatch now to see how long it takes to build this app. I will use MySQL for this tutorial, and I will create the empty database on phpMyAdmin. But you can use MySQL Workbench, the MySQL console, or any other tool. Maybe you already have a database, no problem. DaDaBIK will create an application on the top of that database. So in that case, you don't have to create it. So I call the database DaDaCRM. Okay, database created. Let's install DaDaBIK now. I take the DaDaBIK zip file. This is the file you get when you download DaDaBIK. I'll unzip it. I get 2 folders. One containing the documentation and the other one containing the files that compose DaDaBIK. So I copy the content of this folder and paste it under my web root. In an empty folder I created and I called DaDa-CRM. Okay, so before installing DaDaBIK, I need to fill the DaDaBIK configuration file with a few parameters, for example, the database credentials. So this is my configuration file, empty, is the file that you will find in the include folder. It's called config_custom.php, and this is an example of configuration file you can find in DaDaBIK documentation, only containing the bare minimum. We copy from here, okay, we copy from here and we paste it here, okay. I delete everything from here, so we will fill all the parameters together. Okay, I can leave time zone. All right, serial number, of course, here you have to put your serial number. DBMS type in our case is MySQL. You know, you can have PostgreSQL, Microsoft SQL Server, or SQLite. Host, in my case, the MySQL server is on my local machine, so 127.0.0.1 is the address of my local machine. Database name is DaDa-CRM. User, I have on my MySQL server a user called DaDaCRM, having all the permissions on this database. The password of the user is this one, and then we have two security related parameters: secret key and DaDaBIK session name. Secret key is supposed to be a long, random and complicated string that must be different for each DaDaBIK application. This is just a test on my local machine, so I'll just write some random characters. And DaDaBIK session name, again, this is supposed to be unique on the server where the installation, where the application is installed. This is just a test, so let's do something similar. You can read more details about these two parameters in the documentation, of course. Okay, let's save. Okay, now we can proceed with the installation. We pasted everything in the folder dada-crm, so our application is now reachable from localhost/dada-crm. And in particular, we want to run install.php. Okay, requirements are okay. So we have a few installation options here. In our case, we'll create a blank, empty application. Okay. Okay. Done. So let's see the application created. We log in using the default admin user, that is root, username root, password Letizia. For the moment it's empty, as you can see, because our database was empty. You can see the two default users created by DaDaBIK and two default groups. That's it. This is our application. If you are an admin user, and we are, because we logged in as root, and root is a user belonging to the admin group, you can edit this application as well. So edit this application. This is the place where we develop, configure our application. So the first thing we need to do is create the tables where we want to store our data. We'll probably need at least a few tables. Probably the most important one is a table customers, where we store the data about our customers. Remember, we are going to build a CRM, Customer Relationship Management Application. So, data. Before creating the customers table, let's set data types simple, and it's already set. And install and enable tables on creation. Yes, this makes things faster. Okay, sorry, my fault. Before, to use this data part, you have to enable this data operation first. So let's go back to our configuration file. This is just a security related setting. Okay, so enable data tab operations equal to 1. I will also enable create view equal to 1 because later we will use it, and I also change the theme, which is something I forgot. Okay, well, as you can see, you will see it later. We have here the minimum required parameters we need for your configuration file, but you have also a lot of other optional parameters you can use, and these are examples. The config.php file, so not this one is config custom.php. The config.php file contains all the parameters you can use in your config custom file. Each parameter is explained, so you can use that file, config.php, as documentation. Okay, so let's go back to settings, and okay, good. Now we create the customers table. So table customers create. Okay, as you can see, by default, DaDaBIK, when you create a table, adds an ID field that is primary key auto increment. Well, of course, if you don't need it, you can delete this field, but we will use it, and we will add the other field. So first name, that is a short text, and then last name, short text, email, and then phone. What else? We need a status field. Why a status field? We call this table customers, but it contains also simple contacts or leads, so they can be just potential customers, but also real customers. So we will have a status field that will tell us if it's a lead, a prospect, or a customer. Lead, prospect are terms typically used in CRM. For example, if you meet someone that told you is interested in your product and you exchange your phone numbers to discuss about it, that person can become a customer, but technically at the moment it's just a prospect. Okay, so status, and then what else? Creator. This will contain the username of the salesperson who created this record, who added this customer to the database. This is something that will be very, very useful. We will see why later. And then I will add registration date time. Here we will store the date time when the record related to this customer is created. And this is a date and time field. Okay, save, done. Let's see the application now. So exit admin. The application is still empty. Why? We need to talk about permissions. By default, when a table is installed in DaDaBIK, all the permissions are set to no. You can change this default behavior, but I left the default configuration, so we have to set permissions, and starting from now, I'll keep two tabs open. One, this one on the actual application, the result of our work, and the other one on the development section, admin area, this one. Okay. Before going through the permissions, let me clarify one more thing. We created the table customers with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 fields. This is probably the minimum set of fields we need for our application, but of course you can have more fields. For example, you might need the address, the city, the country. Remember, this is a standard database table, so you can have as many fields you want. Okay, let me go through the permissions now. Let me select customers here and admin. In this page, you can set the permissions of your application. So for example, here I'm setting which permissions I want to grant to the users belonging to the admin group for the table customers. And we have two levels: table level permissions, field level permissions. On the table level, we have the typical CRUD permissions. It's CRUD, which stands for create, read, update, in our case it's called edit, and delete. So for each of these four permissions, you can set yes or no. Actually, you have also another option, my, but I will talk about that later. In addition, you'll have two additional permissions, details and CSV. Details, yes, if you want to grant to the users belonging to that group the possibility to see the details page of a record, which in DaDaBIK is a different permission respect to the simple read. And then CSV, if you want to enable the export to CSV for that table, you set yes. So we set yes for all and save. Then we have the field level permissions. For example, let's say that you want to allow edit for the customer's table, but only, let's say, the last name must be editable. The other fields are not editable. Then table level, you have edit yes, so the table is editable, but then you allow edit only on one field, last name. We will go through more details later. For the moment, I would set yes for everything except from the ID. For the ID field, I click here no for all. ID is an auto-increment primary key. It's a number. In most of the cases, the user of the application don't need to see it. Don't need to edit it, so no. And we leave everything else to yes. And save. Okay, let's go back to our application now. Okay, as you can see now, we have an additional item in the menu, customers. Why? Because we have the read permissions now. So if I click here, I can create a new customer. So let me add to customer, for example, Okay, let me try something here. I want to show you something. I try to insert some data and an email that is not a valid email. As you can see, I'm getting an error. Why? Because during the installation of a table, DaDaBIK tries to guess, according to the schema of the table, which validation rules and which field type it should use for that field. For example, here, since the field name contained the word email, DaDaBIK thinks this is a field that should contain a valid email. That's why I'm getting this error. Of course, then you can, if the guess is not correct, you can change, and we will see later that we will use the form configurator for that. Okay, this is the first customer. We can edit this customer and change something. Alice at okay, and I'm going to insert as new this additional customer. All right, so DaDaBIK has just created a CRUD app based on one table customers for the moment. As I said, later we will see how to configure each field using the form configurator. For example, just to mention something, status here is just a text box where I typed lead. We probably want a drop-down menu with the three options: lead, prospect, and customer. We will see how to do it. But let me spend some more words about permissions, and in particular field permissions. So let's go through all these permissions. Results. This is the permission that you set in order to see a field in this results grid. So for example, if for first name I set results no, I won't see the first name in this table, but I will still see it in the edit form, for example. Okay, then edit again. This is what you see in the edit form. We have yes, no, but we also have yes, but disabled. Okay, yes, but disabled. It means that first name is here, but I cannot edit it. I can edit the last name, but not the first name. Good. Then create. This controls the fact that the field is or not in the insert form. Details. The details page is this one. Again, yes or no. Quick search. The quick search form is this one. These fields. Okay. Very often you don't want to have here all the fields, especially if it's a table with a lot of fields, but just a few in the quick search form. Advanced search instead here, and this is here. Normally you want to have all the fields or almost all the fields, and that's a search form. So for example, I can search for well, let's do is equal to Bob, and I get, of course, the record for Bob Smith. Okay, so again, DaDaBIK created a CRUD application, a basic CRUD application. I can create, I can read and search with advanced search or quick search. I can edit Bob Smith 2. I can also edit inline, okay, from here. For example, I click here, lead customer, and I can delete. If I click here and I confirm, I will delete this record. Okay, in addition to the classic CRUD features, we also get chart generation, pivot table generation. You can export your data to CSV. You can import from Excel or CSV files. You can export to PDF. We will see at least some of these features later. But let's improve our application now using the form configurator. This is a page you will use a lot during the development of a DaDaBIK application. From here, you configure each field of your form. Let's see what I mean. When you create a table in DaDaBIK, as I said before, DaDaBIK creates a set of CRUD forms and tries to guess the best settings for each form field. But you might need to change these settings. For example, let's take we mentioned before the field status. Okay, and let's go through some of the settings. We will see the other settings later. For example, label. Here, of course, you can specify a label that could be different from the field name you want to use in the form. So, well, if I add something here, as you can see, the form preview, the live preview is automatically updated, so you will see the effect of the change. So label of the form, label of the results grid, that could be different. If you don't specify anything, it will be the same. Field type, that's another important parameter to go through. So here you specify the field type you want to use in the form for that field. So here we have text, so status is a normal text box. Okay. We have text area, which is literally an HTML text area, so it's useful if you have if you need more space for your text. And then we have a rich editor, that is again a wide text box, but in this case you have a rich editor, so you can add HTML and so some formatting to your text. Then we have some date and date time fields. We have I will talk later about the list fields. We have file fields, generic file and image file. These field types allow you to upload pictures or generic file in your form. And then we have these two fields. The last one, probably you'll never use it. ID user instead is very important, but we will see this later. Okay, let's talk about list fields, because probably this is exactly the field type we need for status. So for status, we want a drop-down menu containing the three options that are allowed. So we said it's, well, a record in this table can be a lead, a prospect, or a customer. Okay, so select single is the field type we need. Select single is a drop-down menu where you can choose just one option. Okay, select multiple menu instead is again a drop-down menu, well, a menu with some predefined options, but you can choose more than one option. But let's go back to select single. Our status field at the moment is empty. We have to specify the options, and we have two ways to do it. The first one is here. I will set here an hard-coded list of the options. So for example, lead, prospect, and customer. Okay, by default I use the tilde character as a separator, and here we are the options. The second way is the lookup field, setting the field as a lookup field, which means we take the options from another table. That will be the lookup table name, but we will see this second approach later. I want to do one more thing. I want to set the default value, which is lead. So when you open an insert form, the lead option will be pre-selected. Okay. As you can see, we have a lot of other parameters to set. We will see most of them later. I just want to add something about the content type now. So we went through the field type options. We have the content type is something more you can set. Let me save here. Let me choose email, another field, the field email. Okay, email has as field type text and as content type email, which means that DaDaBIK, every time you add something, you fill with some data, this field, DaDaBIK will try to check if is a valid email. So the content type impacts on the validation, but also on formatting. So for example, email will be displayed as a mail to link in the results grid and in the details page. There are other two fields I want to configure now. The first one is registration date time, that at the moment is a datetime field. So you have to specify a date time when you insert a new record, or even when you update a record if you want to change this value. But what we want to get is that we want to fill this field automatically. Okay, so instead of date time, we choose insert date time. As you can see, the field disappears from the insert form. I didn't mention this before, but from here you can choose the kind of preview you want to see. Here we are looking at the insert form from the point of view of the admin group. So why the field disappeared here? Because regardless of the permissions, an insert date time is not displayed in the insert form. Why? Because it's always automatically filled by DaDaBIK with the current date time. Okay, so registration date time was the first field, and the second one is creator. So creator should contain the username of the salesperson who created this the current customer's record. Okay, right now is a text field, but this is not the right field type, because we don't want the user to manually type who is the creator, but we prefer that DaDaBIK automatically fills this field with the username of the current user. Okay, so for creator we choose ID user. ID user is the correct field type. Every time there is an ID user, field DaDaBIK fills the correspondent field with the username of the current user. So save. Differently from insert datetime, as you can see, the ID user field is displayed in the insert form, but probably we don't want to have it in the insert form. So we go to the permissions page and creator no on yes on create, sorry, and edit maybe yes but disabled. Okay, we want to show the value in the edit form, but we want to prevent modifications, and save. Okay, now we can see if everything is working. Maybe we create a new customer. I put some random data here. Well, as you can see, we got the current date time and the name of the creator automatically. Next, I also want to represent the company the customer works for. Maybe we can have 2 or more leads or prospects working for the same company, and we want to represent the information related to the company in our database. So we need an additional table companies, and we will create a relationship between the table customers and the table companies. So let's create the table first, and let me show an alternative method. Instead of creating the table from here, I can create it from MySQL Workbench or any other database admin tool. Okay, let me use MySQL Workbench for this example. So we are in the Dada CRM database, and I will add a new table from here. I call it companies, column, ID, I would say ID, just 4 simple fields: ID, name, email, and website of the company. Okay, so ID. As you can see here, the field types look different respect to what you saw here, right? Why? Here we had just a few simplified field types, the same for all the database management systems. So the same for MySQL, PostgreSQL, and so on and so forth. Instead, here we have, let me show name, for example, we have the actual field types provided by MySQL. Why? Because here I chose simple. It's easier, faster, and in most of the cases it's just fine. But if you want, you can keep it this as advanced, and you will be able to choose the field type, exactly the field type you want. So, for example, what we called short text here in MySQL is a varchar field having max length 255. Okay, so name varchar 255. This is the correspondent of a short text in our data page. Okay, so ID, primary key, not null, and auto increment. Name, and then we have we said email again 255. Not null, and let's call it website again and not null. Apply. Okay, the table is created. Since we created the table outside DaDaBIK, we have to install the table in our DaDaBIK application. And then, of course, set the permissions. So if we look at the data page now, we have the companies table here. However, it's still an external table, not installed in our application. So we have to go here, other not installed tables, and there is just companies here, and install it. So now let's set the permissions. Companies, admin, yes, for all the permissions, table level, field level, yes to all, except from ID. That is a primary key auto increment field. So same thing we did with customers. And save. Let's check our application, and now we have companies as well. Okay, now for each customer, I want to set the company they work for. How can I create this relationship? Using a lookup field, as I said before. So technically, from the database point of view, since it's a one-to-many relationship, each customer has a company. Each company can have many customers. I will add an ID company field to the table customers. Let's go here into our data page, add field ID company. So for each customer, we register the company the customer works for. Okay, and we are going to use the ID of the company here. That's why it's integer number. And I will also add a type field, short text. Here I'm setting if the customer is an individual or if the customer works for a company. Maybe individual is not the correct term here, but anyway, we want to distinguish customers according to the fact they are affiliated with a company or not. Okay, so type short text, and here we will set individual or company. Okay, save changes. Now permissions, customers, admin. We have two additional fields here, ID company and type, yes and yes for both. Okay, and save. Now form configurator, ID company. So let's configure this field. At the moment it's just text field. First of all, the label is not ID company. It's not very meaningful for the final user. It's better to use just company. Okay, and here we are going to use the lookup field. So this is a select single, but instead of specifying the hard-coded list of options here, I will use the companies table as a source of my drop-down menu. So the lookup table name is companies. The lookup table primary key field is ID, the ID of the company. The lookup table linked field is what? So here we set the fields that we want to show to the final user in the menu. So the final user probably want to see in the menu the name of the company, but anyway, in the database, we will store the ID of the company. Okay. You can also add other linked fields. For example, I can add, I don't know, the email. So it will be name plus email. So at the moment it's empty because the company's table is empty, but it will be populated when we will start to add records to the company's table. That's it. I don't want to set the other parameters. That's enough for the moment. So save. And I want to set, I want to configure type as well. So type is, let's say, radio field having two options. We said individual and or company. Okay, and maybe the default will be individual. And save. Let's see how it works now. So customers, new customer, we have these two additional fields. Let me add some random data. Company, again, is empty. What we can do, we can go to the companies page and add some companies there, but we can also add the company directly from here, plus. So pop-up page will appear, and here we can add our company. For example, I don't know, Apple. Save, close, okay, and let's say that is company here. So it's a customer who works for a company that is Apple. Okay, save. All right, we have our data. If we go to the companies page, we will see also the record here. Okay, let's improve our permissions now. At the moment, we only have two default groups. Admin, let me check here. Admin and default. But in our application, we need two additional groups. Salespeople and sales managers. I'll delete the default group. It's not very useful for us. And I will insert some users. So users, create new. I will add Bob and Alice, who are salespeople, and Jimmy, sales manager. So Bob, first name Bob, I'll skip the last name, info@bob.com, group. We have only admin here. We can add, as we did before, the group from here. So we said sales people. Okay, and as password, since it's just a local test, I will use Bob. I have to go through this encryption pop-up, so it's Bob. And all right, force password change, I set it to no. By default, when an admin adds a user, that user is forced to change the password at the next login. Okay, but we don't need it. Of course, that's a security measure, but we don't need it for this test, so no. The other option you have to register new users is to enable self-registration. In that case, users will be able to register through the application with the confirmation email and the usual things. So I will also check here multiple inserts that allows me to insert multiple records and change just a few fields. Okay, so save, and Bob is there. Then we have Alice, salespeople. Password will be Alice, encrypt, and all right. And I click on insert as new. So Alice is there. And finally, we have Jimmy. Jimmy. It's not in the group salespeople. We need another group because Jimmy is a manager. So sales managers. Okay. Force password change. No. Password. Okay, multiple insert, no, insert as new. Okay, we have the 3 new users now. Okay, we need to set the permissions now because we have 2 additional groups and for example, sales managers, as you can see on customers, they have no for all the permissions. Okay, so what we can do, we can copy the permissions from the group admin to the group sales managers for all the items, all the tables and custom pages. We don't know at the moment what is a custom page. I will show you later, but for everything we copy the permissions. Okay. All right, and we also copy the permissions to salespeople. Okay, so now we have the same permissions on admin, sales managers, and salespeople. However, we want to limit the permissions for salespeople. In particular, for customers, we want to set for read, delete, and edit, and also for CSV, my. What does it mean? It means that I can read, I can delete, I can modify, I can export only the records, the customers I created. Okay, not all the customers, only the ones I created. Do you remember the ID user field type we used before? We know, thanks to that field, the creator of each customer. Let's see if it works. So let me log out and log in as Alice, for example. Okay, companies, I see the company. Customers apparently is empty. Why? Because at the moment there isn't any customers having as a creator Alice. So let's add a new one. First name, last name, email, phone, company, Apple. Okay, save. As you can see, now I see one record that is the only one in my database having as creator Alice. If instead I log in as Jimmy, I see all the customers because I don't have the my limitation on the permissions that salespeople have. Okay, additional step. We want to store in our CRM application also our sales. So I'm going to create the table sales now, and we will store our sales there. So data. Okay, now I'm logged in as Jimmy. Jimmy is not an admin, and that's why I cannot see the admin area. So I have to log in back as root, edit this application, and data. Table sales ID, and then for each sale I want to represent the customer, the related customer. So I'm using I will use a lookup field. Here I will store the ID of the customer. It's integer, and then even in sales I want to register the creator of the sale, and that's a short text, the username of the salesperson who created the sale, and then date time. What else? The amount, decimal number, and a description of what we are selling, basically. And that's short text again, or long text, depending on how long the description should be. That's it. Save. Of course, the way you represent a sale really depends on your business. Here we only have an amount and a description field. But maybe you are selling products that you want to represent in a products table, and each sale can contain many products. So in that case, you will have a many-to-many, so-called many-to-many relationship between sales and products. So you would need two additional tables: the products table containing all your products, and a so-called bridge table. For example, you can call it sales underscore products table, containing a reference to the ID of the product and a reference to the ID of the sale. But we won't cover this case in this tutorial. We have here a more simple structure of the table sales. So sales, we have to set the permissions. Sales, again, first we do admin, yes, for everything except from the ID, and also, as we did before, the creator. We hide the field, the creator field, from the create form, and we make it disabled in the edit form. Okay, and then we copy from group admin to group sales managers. This time not for everything, because that would overwrite our permission settings, but only for the table sales. Okay, admin to sales manager and admin to salespeople. And again, for salespeople, we are setting my here. We limit. Maybe one thing to point out, this approach I'm using, so first copy the permissions, then delete the permissions, or limit the permissions for one or more groups, makes sense if the application is still under development, so nobody can access the application, so it's not deployed yet, or is in maintenance mode. So from here, from status, you can put the application in maintenance mode. Otherwise, at least for a very short period of time, some users, in our case salespeople, will have permission they shouldn't have. So form configurator, sales ID is fine, ID customer, maybe the label should be just customer, and that's a select single, it's a lookup field, and the lookup table name is customers, the primary key is ID, and we want, I don't know, the first plus the last name of the customer as linked fields. So the fields the final user will see in the menu. Okay, these are our customers. And save. Then daytime, we want insert daytime here. Creator is an ID user field. Amount is fine. Is text, and content type is numeric, so only numbers will be accepted. Description is fine, is text alphanumeric. Okay, let me see the application. Now we have sales, and we can create a new sales with customer, amount, and description. Okay, let me insert some fake sales now. It's useful because otherwise I don't have enough data to produce meaningful graphs later. Okay, I will be back in a second. Okay, I added 2 additional users, salespeople group, Sarah and Tom, and many sales, more than 1,000. Okay, we will use this data later. Now I want to show you the import feature, and let's work with companies. I want to fill the companies table with some companies, but I want to get the data from an Excel file instead of filling the insert form manually. So, well, this is the insert form. Okay, we have name, email, and website. And let me show you this company's Excel file containing exactly the same columns, name, email, and website, and some records. Okay, so we need to put in our Excel or CSV file the data that DaDaBIK expects on an insert form. Okay, so let's go back here, import, and these are the supported formats, and this is the file I showed you before. Okay, so upload file. 5 new elements will be added. This is just a preview. And okay. All right, voila. These are the 5 records I've imported. If I click here, I see the whole table because there was already a company that I think it was Apple. Okay, just a few things. If you need to change something during the import process, for example, your values in Excel are in a slightly different format, the column names are different, you can, in your configuration file, give to DaDaBIK the transformation rules to use. I'm not going into these details, you can find everything in the documentation. Also, during the import process, remember that all the operations that DaDaBIK normally does during a standard insert process are executed. For example, the values are validated. If I have an email in my Excel file that is not a valid email, I get an error during the import process. And finally, don't forget that DaDaBIK allows Excel and CSV synchronization as well. Let's make an example. Let's say that some of your sales people register the sales on Excel, and periodically they want to import their sales into the application. You can decide one or more fields to use to uniquely identify your sales in the system, and when DaDaBIK detects the sale is importing is not new, it's already in the system, it updates the sale with the new data instead of adding a new sale. So that is Excel CSV synchronization. Let's see another useful feature, duplication checking. You probably want to prevent the duplication of information in your database. Sometimes, by mistake, the same piece of information is registered twice, and this can lead to problems, of course, in your database. Let's make a simple example. So let me go to the form configurator, and let's enable duplication checking for the name of the company. Name of the company, check for duplicated entries during insert. Yes. So what is happening when you insert a new record, not when you updated it, only when you insert a new record, DaDaBIK will check if there is already the same company, same name in this case, or even a similar name, because sometimes there can be smaller variations, right? And in case, it displays a warning, and you can decide if you want to continue or not. So for example, let's say we want to insert by mistake a Commodore again. So name Commodore, and then info@commodore.com. Okay, so the duplication is detected. Okay, we can insert anyway, or we can change the data or forget about it and go back. But let's see what happens if I introduce a small variation. For example, Commodore with just one M. Again, because it's too similar to an existing record. You can also change the threshold to use for similarity check in your configuration file. Of course, if I add something completely different, it will work. Okay, so since we were in the form configurator, let me show something more about it. If you want to configure in greater detail your forms. First, well, let's choose this form, customers. First thing I want to show you is that you can divide your forms in blocks using separators. Let's do it. Let's see a preview of the edit form. Okay, and let's say that in this edit form, I want to divide the customer fields into 3 blocks: general info, contact info, and other info. the general info part will contain just first name and last name. So I need to add the name of my first separator, general info or general information, here before first name. So first name, and add a separator before this field in the edit form. General info. Okay, can you see it? The other thing I want to change is, instead of having one field under the other, I want to show two fields on the same row. So to do that, new line after this field in the edit form, no. Okay, first and last name, and then we can save. Okay, we can do the same for the rest of the form. So we said email and phone in contact information. Okay, so separator contact info. Okay, and new line after this field, no. Save. And then we can leave the other fields here before status. We can write something like other info. Okay, and if you want, you can again put two fields on the same row. It's very easy, as I showed you. Okay, let's make some charts and tabular reports now, and let's group them together into a dashboard. First, I want to show how the sales are going month by month, also using historical data. So generate chart, and I want to use line chart, date time, aggregate data by date time, but month date time, and count. So for each month I will see how many sales I have. Okay, so let's make it a little bigger. All right. So now I will produce a set of charts, and I want to include all of them in a dashboard. A single page that summarizes my key performance indicators. So let me open another tab here, and let me create the page first. So custom pages, add pages, add page, and dashboard. Enabled is an HTML page, and well, let's just save it for the moment. Now, embedding a report in a page is very, very simple. So here, show embed code. I copy this code, and here in my page, well, here I can write whatever I want, but in this case, I will go directly in the source, in the HTML source code of the page, and I paste my graph. Save. Here we go. We have the graph in the page. Let's see if it works. So we have a page. As for the other pages, this is a custom page, but as the other pages, the ones based on tables, we have to assign permissions. So custom pages, dashboard, admin. The permissions for a custom page are very simple. So we have no, yes, or yes, but don't show in menu. Maybe I will tell you later why you would need sometimes this third option. Yes. Okay. Okay, now we have our dashboard here with our chart. The plan is to do exactly the same for the other charts. I will embed all the charts in the same dashboard. So sales again. Next chart will be a pie chart representing the amount of sales per salesperson. Okay, so for each salesperson we want to see the percentage share. So again, chart, pie chart, aggregate data by creator, and show percentage. Show embed code, and here we go. Pages. So, okay, this was the first graph, and then we have another one, pie chart, and okay, don't worry about the layout of the dashboard because for the moment I'm just pasting the code, but then I will arrange the layout as well. Next, a bar chart. I want to see a bar chart. This time with the number of sales. Okay, count. Again, I aggregate, I group the data by creator. The creator is the salesperson. Okay, so we can see that Sarah has 386 sales, for example. Show embed code, copy, tool, source code, okay, and save. Maybe I can leave the editor open without saving to save some time. Again, another bar chart. This time we consider the revenues generated. So creator and show sum of amount. Okay, so for each salesperson we sum together the amount of each sale. Okay, that will produce as information the revenues generated by each creator. All right, so from here we see that Sarah sells a lot in terms of number of sales, if you remember the previous graph, but probably the revenue of each sale is on average small, because if we look into this second graph, she is the one who generated less revenue if we exclude root. Okay, so well, first let's copy again the code here, and this time I will leave everything open. So bar chart 2, and this is my code. So let's see in another graph the average value for each sale. So this should confirm our guess for what I said about Sarah. Okay, so average amount for each creator. Yes, in fact the average amount is low. Okay, again, copy, bar chart 3. So let me do a summary pivot report here for each salesperson, I want to see in a table, so not in a graph, the number of sales, the revenues generated, and the average value for each sale. Okay, so let's go back to sales, generate pivot, aggregate data by creator, and show the count and the revenues generated, add column, and the average amount. Okay, if you want, we can also have the standard deviation. Okay, show embed code, copy. Let me tell you something. As you see, I haven't used any code here, not even SQL. But remember that you can write, if you want, a more complex chart and tabular, pivot table reports using your own SQL query by clicking here, Advanced SQL Report. Okay, sorry, now they are disabled, so I have to enable them from my configuration file. Enable Advanced SQL Report equal to 1. So this is a flag I have to put in my configuration file if I want to use these advanced SQL reports. Okay. So, well, let's start from scratch. Generate chart, for example, and here you can write your query and generate a graph based on your query using also group by. All right, so I still need to add the last code here. Okay, save, dashboard. What is going on? Oh, sorry, I haven't saved here. Okay. Okay, as you can see, the layout is very, we have the information, but the layout is very, very bad. So I will try to improve it. So let's start with a title. Well, we can call this managers dashboard and format heading 1. Okay, then we could embed all these charts in a grid, in a table, to guarantee a better layout. So for example, table here, table, let's say 3. Okay, let's try like this. Cut and paste here. Okay, I will put on the second row, I will leave here some space for the title, and then I will put here the pie chart and the pivot table. Then I will fix everything. And then in the last row, the 3 bar charts. So guys, I'm just cutting here and pasting into the cells. Maybe it's easier if I merge here the cells of the first row. Okay, because we have just one, we have 3 columns, but just one graph. So I selected the 3 cells and column, cell, merge cells. Okay. Okay. So now we have space for the third bar chart. And well, let's delete this part. Well, maybe we can merge these two cells. Okay. Let's add some titles here. So these are the sales by month. Okay. Maybe it would be better to have the revenues by month. We can do it easily as we did for the revenues by sales person, but originally this was sales by month. Okay, maybe bold. And then here we have percentage sales by sales person. And then we have sales people summary data. And then we have number sales by sales person, revenues by sales person, average amount by sales person. Bold, bold, and bold. Okay, let me check. Okay, it's better. We don't want these borders here. So table, properties, border 0, save. Okay. I think it's pretty good now. One thing, remember that these are not simple screenshots. These reports are auto-updatable. So if the data changes, for example, a new sale is registered, when I open again this page, I will see different reports. Okay, auto-updatable. Let's talk about the layout now. What can you do to change, to customize the layout of your application? First of all, you can change the logo. Okay, in your configuration file, you can set logo img. I created a logo for this test and I called it crm_logo.png, and I saved this file in the folder images. So images/crm_logo.png. Okay, let's see. All right, that's a very simple logo, just a test. What else you can do? Many things. First, you can change the theme from your configuration file. Again, you can set the theme among 5 different themes. A theme is basically a combination of colors for your application. If you remember, we set the theme as blue-gray. You have other 4 themes. Okay. If you're familiar with CSS, you can also create your own theme. You can choose if you want the classic left side menu or the drop-down menu with all your pages to save space. So menu type drop-down menu, because by default you have this menu. With the other solution, you have a menu here. Okay, and these are basically the things you can do directly from the configuration file. Then you can add your own style settings in a file called stylescreen.custom.css. So this is the file. The file basically is empty. The main file DaDaBIK uses for styles is stylescreen.css. That file is full of CSS code, but don't edit that file. Use this one, the stylescreen custom.css, and use the other file only for documentation if you need it, because it is overwritten if you upgrade DaDaBIK. Instead, you can add your own customizations that override the default settings in this file. Okay, for example, let's say the main font used in your application, the one used in the body, must be Times New Roman, and the color, instead of black, by default is black, is more a gray. Okay, so I will add here some CSS body, font family, Times New Roman, and color. Okay, save. Okay, this is the default font and color. Let me reload. Nothing is changing. Okay, it's probably a cache problem. So the CSS file is in the cache of the browser. I can just clear the cache, but I will show you something different that is useful when you are developing your application. You can do force reload CSS and JavaScript equal to 1 only in this period when you are developing the application. Okay. All right, as you can see, we have Times New Roman and gray. Almost all the elements that compose the layout of the application have a CSS class. That means that you can really customize the layout using this file. Okay, let's remove this and okay, something else. Well, let's see. Okay, something else you can do for changing the layout of the results grid, this part, is adding an HTML template. So by default, you have, this classic grid, but I can use something completely different. Let me show an example. One of the demo we have on our website, the My Movies demo. Can you see here? It's the results grid is completely different respect to the standard one. How can you do this? By specifying here in my, as usual, in my admin area, data grid templates. Here I'm specifying for the movies table a data grid template. As you can see, it's pure HTML plus some placeholders. I don't know, for example, here, let me check. Here, DaDaBIK field, title movie, DaDaBIK field. This is a placeholder. This tells DaDaBIK to replace this with the actual title of the movie. Title movie is the field name of the field containing the title of the movie. Okay, but then around I have just HTML code. Then layout hook. Let me go back here. So each application has some precise points in the layout where you can attach your code. HTML, JavaScript, PHP, These are called layout hooks. For example, let me enter here in the edit form of a customer. For example, here there is a layout hook. After the head of the edit form of each table and view, you have the so-called after edit form header. This is the header hook. But let's see an example. So I'm gonna open the layout hooks file. So this is my layout hooks file. For the moment it's empty, and let me write something and then I'll tell you everything. So customers edit form header after DaDaBIK custom header, and then function DaDaBIK custom header. Don't worry, it's easier than you think. Let me check if it's working first, and then... Okay, this is my custom text that I printed using my layout hook. But how does it work? So basically here I'm saying I want to set a hook, and in particular on the customers table, an after edit form header hook. So in that part, defined by after edit form header, only for the customers, execute this function. And this function only contains an echo that in PHP is the command we use to print something on the screen. Okay. Well, I can, just to show you, I will put another hook before edit form header, and this part will be displayed both before and after customers. Okay. Here I have just printed a sentence, but you can add all the code you want: HTML, PHP, and JavaScript code. So as you can imagine, you can really have an impact on the layout. You have 12 hooks for each table view. For each table or view, we haven't seen views so far, but okay. And 3 general hooks that are valid for the whole application. Remember, everything you write here is custom code. So even if you upgrade DaDaBIK, your hooks will not be overwritten. The very last thing you can do is the more complicated one, because you need to change the DaDaBIK code. You can edit some files that DaDaBIK uses to build the layout. The file header.php, the file footer.php, and also some other files. Let's talk about header and footer. Header is responsible for this part of the page, this part, while footer for this part. Okay, and what about this part? Most of the pages are either based on a form or on a results grid, right? So these are the 2 files you can edit: form.php, resultsgrid.php. However, unless you really have to, I suggest not to edit those files, because those files, for obvious reasons, are overwritten when you upgrade DaDaBIK, and therefore you will need to apply again your modifications. Next topic is master detail forms. Let's say that in our application, we also want to register the communications we exchanged with the customers. For example, if we have a phone call, I want to register this fact in my application with a date time and a short note that summarizes what we said during the phone call, as a reminder for the next time we'll talk. For each customer, we want to see the list of communications we exchanged. So not only I need a communications table, but I want to be able to see in the customers page, like I'm in the record, in the edit form of a customer. Here I want to see all the communications, and I want to take the data from another table. This is what we call master detail. I'll show you how to do it in a minute, but let's create the table communications first. So let's go back here in our admin area, data. Okay, sorry, I was probably my session expired. Tables. ID, the ID, I mean primary key of the table. Then I need the ID of the customer. Okay. And what else? Salesperson. So the salesperson involved. We need the customer and the salesperson involved in this communication. So okay. Why did I set short text for salesperson? Because I'm going to use for this field the ID user field type. Do you remember the one we used also for creator? Since the salesperson will register the communication, we will store here the username of the current logged in user. And then what else? Date, time, well, maybe one word, date time, and it's date and time, description, long text, and also file. Maybe I want to attach a file related to this communication. This allows me to show how uploads work. And short text is fine. Why? Because in the database the name of the file will be stored, but the file itself will be stored in the file system. That's it. So save, permissions, communication, admin, yes for all the field permissions, but let's set to no the ID as usual, and create no for salesperson, edit yes but disabled, and save. So we can copy from admin to salespeople, table communications, and from admin to sales managers as well. Okay, actually for salespeople, we need to set my for read, delete, and edit. So each salesperson can see, delete, and modify only their communications, and CSV as well. Good. So now I should be able to see the tables, communications here, and I can add communication. However, as I said, I want to see the communication, the customers page. So, well, we need to configure the communication in form configurator first. So ID is fine. ID customer, what is ID customer? Is a lookup field. So select single, lookup table name customers. We are taking the options from customers. ID is primary key, first name and plus last name are the linked fields. Okay, good. Then salesperson is an ID user, we said, right? Okay, and then daytime is, I'm wondering why is text here. It should be daytime already, because the original field in the database was date time. Maybe I made a mistake. Daytime, okay, it was set as time instead of date time. Okay, now I understand. Anyway, I will change it from here, date time, and that's it. Okay, description is okay. We have a text area and it's fine. You can make it bigger if you want. You can choose width and height here. Maybe we can increase the max length to, I don't know, 500, something like that. And file is a file field. So we choose generic file. Okay, we are getting an error because we didn't enable uploads in our configuration file. So let me do it. Okay, file. All right. So let me see how. Okay, we have ID customer, daytime, description, and file. Okay, with this component you can upload files here. File shouldn't be required though. We can register communication without attaching a file. So for file required, no. Okay, it's not required. And the ID customer shouldn't be ID customer. I mean, the label should be just customer. Okay. All right. Let me add a communication here. For example, with Alice Brown. Okay, description, test, we told, without any file. Okay, I know why we're getting error, because we set the file field in the database as not null. Okay, so data, nullable, yes. Save changes, and okay, so the communication has been registered. However, we said we want to see these communications in the customers in the customer page. So customers, Alice Brown, we want to see her communications here. How can we do it? So form configurator, customers. ID, the primary key of customers. Here, if we want to use the customers table as the master, we will add all the detailed forms. In our case, just one, communications. So here, items table name, the items table name we want to attach to this master detailed form is communication. And here we need to tell DaDaBIK which is the field in the items or detail table, communications table, which is the field that links each communication to the related master record. So in other terms, each communication to a customer and its ID customer, right? So for each record in the communications table, ID customer is the field we use to link that communication to a specific customer. That in our case is the master of our master detail form. Okay, this is called foreign key, but let me tell you something. If you're familiar with relational databases and database design, don't take the term foreign key literally here. Probably this field is also foreign key, but here just means the value in this field tells me for each record in the details table which is the corresponding record in the master table. Okay, so save. Okay, we can see the result here, Alice Brown, and as you can see we have communications and one communication, that is the one we registered before. If you want to add another communication with Alice Brown, you can just add it from here, create new item. As you can see, the customer Alice Brown is already selected, and you can just add the other fields. Question: do we need communications here in the left menu? Probably not, because as I showed you, we can add communications from here. So let me show how to remove it from here. Permissions. I'm going to do it just for a user group, but then you can do it for the other ones. We said communications, admin, read no. So, okay, communication is not here anymore, but still I can see the communications here. So probably you're wondering why. Because if you have the read permissions on a master table, and we have the read permissions on customers, you automatically get the read permissions on the related detail tables as well. Okay, so the item communications will not be displayed here in our menu here, but you can still see the communications here as part of the master detail form. Okay guys, I think the application is now ready. It was a long journey, but is over. Okay, now that the application is ready, let me show you something about performances. I often see emails from potential customers who are worried about performances. They said, in my database, I have thousands of records. Will DaDaBIK be able to handle this? For example, a customer told me he tried many WordPress plugins to show data from a table, but above a certain number of records, they just start being very slow. Believe me, thousands of records for DaDaBIK is nothing. Let me show this. I added lots of records to the sales table. Some fake data, obviously. More than 1 million records, as you can see from here. And I installed this DaDaBIK application we created on a shared server that costs around $10 a month if you pay monthly. If you pay yearly, even less. So it's a very cheap hosting provider. I'm not using a super fancy dedicated server, and I do it on purpose to show you how DaDaBIK works on a cheap server. Maybe it's important to point out how I deployed this application to this server. So how can you deploy from your local machine to the cloud? It's very easy. I don't show you all the steps, but basically you just need to copy all the files you have in that DaDa-CRM folder we created at the beginning of this tutorial, and you upload those files to your cloud. Okay, first part. Second part, you export your database and you import the database in your cloud. That's it. The only additional thing you have to do is, of course, you have to edit your config custom file, because now it has to reflect the database credentials you have on your cloud, on your hosting server, which probably are different respect to the credentials of your local machine. And you should also use maybe a stronger secret key and session name. Okay, different from the one you are using on your local machine. And that's it. Anyway, let's see how things are going with 1 million, or more than 1 million records. So sales. As you can see, it's still fast enough, especially considering the amount of records and the kind of server I am using. Okay, and also considering that DaDaBIK for this table is also joining the customer table to show the customer name here. Okay, because in the table sales we only have the customer ID. Maybe let me do something here. Let me put the application in maintenance mode, because in maintenance mode, among the other things, you can also see the time, the amount of time DaDaBIK takes to process this page. Okay, so let's try to move from one page to the other. 0.7 seconds. Very reasonable processing time. The only thing I changed respect to our original application, as you can see, I added the ID field in the results grid. Why? Because DaDaBIK sort your results by a field. By default, it's the first field, the first column. You can change that from here, basically. Let me show you. Pages. For each page name, I can add a default sort by and type setting. But anyway, by default, it's the first column. And since the ID is the primary key of the table, sorting by that field is faster. That's why I add I added the field in the results grid. Alternatively, I could also instead add an index on customer. That's the other option. But well, maybe later I tell you something about indexing, but I don't want to go into much, technical database related details. Adding the ID is already something that can improve your performances. Okay, let me now show something more you can do that is optional. I mean, the application would work anyway, even without these additional things I'm doing, but it makes your application more secure and fast. On your database, you can add referential integrity constraints and indices. Let's start with referential integrity constraints. So, for example, sales structure. Again, I'm working with PHPMyAdmin now. You can use MySQL Workbench. You can use the MySQL console. You can use any database administration tool. It doesn't matter. So, referential integrity constraint. When you have a lookup field, you should also add a referential integrity constraint on that field. What does it mean? For example, let's say the field ID customer in sales. That was a lookup field in DaDaBIK. So for each sale, we choose the ID of the customer involved in that sale. And of course, we want to have in this field only values that are available in the customers table as ID, as primary key, right? Okay, if you want to be sure about that, you can add a referential integrity constraint. Relation view, column ID customer, database, Dada CRM, the database we are using, table customers, column ID. This tells MySQL this rule. Everything you have in the field ID customer table sales must be available in the field ID table customers. So for example, when you register a sale, you cannot add as an ID customer something that is not available in the customers table. This is something that DaDaBIK already checks. Okay, you have a drop-down menu. Let me show you the sales form. So when you choose the customer, these are customers coming from the customers table. So actually you cannot make mistakes. But anyway, well, I can also add a new customer, but this with the plus sign will also add the customer to the customers table, so that's fine. But anyway, even if I try to force that, okay, or if, for example, right now someone delete Alice Brown from the customers, when I'll register, save this sale, DaDaBIK by default, unless you don't change the settings, will produce an error. So this check is already in DaDaBIK. But having an additional security layer on the DBMS is even better. And also, this also means, and this is not a check that DaDaBIK would do, this also means if you add this referential integrity constraint that you cannot delete a customer if you have some sales related to that customer. You cannot do it. You will get an error. At least if you set as default, as it is by default, restrict here. You have a similar limitation also when you try to change the ID in the customers table for a customer that is involved in one or more sales. As you can see, you have other options on delete and on update, but I don't want to go into those details. Okay, so save. Depending on the number of records you have, it can take some time. Done. How about indices? The other topic I wanted to briefly discuss. If you often search by a particular field, or you often sort a table by a particular field, you should think about adding an index on that field to make filter and sort operations faster. For example, if you often search customers by last name, you can add an index on that field. How can you do it? I show you how to do it again on PHPMyAdmin. So let's see the customers table, structures, last name, more, index. I click here, done. Even for indexing, I'm not going into all the technical details because there are a lot of things to say. Let me just tell one additional thing. The fact that an index is making your search faster also depends on the search operator you are using. For example, if you use contains, the search will not be speeded up by a standard index. This depends on how indices are implemented physically on your hard disk by your DBMS. Guys, a quick recap. We created a complete and custom CRM app, starting from scratch in less than 2 hours, using a low-code, no-code platform, DaDaBIK. For any questions, you can write a comment here or send a message through the contact form you find on DaDaBIK.com. How can you get DaDaBIK? Very easy. Visit DaDaBIK.com/download to get your license. As I said, I will post a second and last part of the video in the near future and show some low-code development. Views, custom functions, buttons, operational hooks, conditional fields, and more. We will refine and improve this CRM app, and I will also show the development of a CRM funnel using an external library that I will integrate in DaDaBIK. And I would like to create a series from this video. So this was about building a CRM, and we will have a second part, as I said. But then I can do the same with other applications. For example, I can do an inventory management system or a library management system. They are both interesting use cases. Please let me know in the comments if you are interested and which application you would like me to build using DaDaBIK. Or more generally, if you are interested in the no-code, low-code world, click on subscribe and then hit the notification bell. That's it for today. See you next time. Ciao!